Mr. President. Sa dami ng mga importanteng punto, malamang may mga nalimutan na ako, but allow me to begin with two of the important last questions raised by the good gentleman from Taguigan Pateros. Tama ba pumunta sa UNGA? Ang UNGA ba o ang UN mismo ay para sa consensus building and not for conflict resolution or not for upholding yung katamaan ng posisyon ng isang bansa na nanalo na ng kaso? Actually, if we examine history, Mr. President, tama din na i-consider nating pumunta sa UNGA. For example, Mr. President, the Nicaraguan government went to the UN General Assembly to enforce the International Court of Justice or ICJ decision against the US. So Nicaragua, isang maliit na bansa din tulad natin. Ang katapat niya sa pinagdesisyonan ng isang International Court, ICJ in that case, ay isang dambuhalang bansa rin, ang US noon, tulad natin ngayon sa China. They won in the ICJ, ayaw sumunod ng US to cease and desist in its activities around and inside Nicaragua, kaya dumulog ang Nicaragua sa isang katulad na resolusyon sa UNGA and they were upheld by the United Nations General Assembly. So, hindi mutually exclusive itong iba't ibang ginagawa ng gobyerno natin noon at maaring gawin ngayon. Pangalawa, do we ignore the problems with other countries? No. In fact, earlier I said that the good gentleman could also request the DFA to file a case before the PCA vis-a-vis our relations with Vietnam. Hindi po mutually exclusive itong ating resolusyon ngayon at ang ganyang posibleng course of action. Sinabing walang teritoryo nung nakaraang mga taon. That is arguable and I could research about that and get back to our dear colleagues on that. But yung isang malinaw na nangyari nung nakaraang mga taon which exacerbated the problem for us vis-a-vis China ay dinredge ng China yung ating seabed at ginamit yung ating sariling marine natural resources para maglikha ng mga artificial na isla, imilitarize yung mga iyon at i-claim na kanila. Hindi policy ng US na i-enforce. Actually, hindi naman policy, hindi namang ibang mga bansa to enforce a favorable ruling that a country like us has been awarded in a forum like the PCA. It is up to us to continue taking the executive and legislative actions to stake our claim on the ground or in the water. And certainly, yung pagdulog natin sa UN General Assembly, as the Senate may approve it, expressing the sense of the Senate, and as the DFA would be the one to finalize the final language para makalikha ng mas malawak na consensus with other nations in the UNGA, Mr. President, I think is a very reasonable course of action based on principle at based sa nakaraang mga karanasan ng ibang mga bansa din, Mr. President.
Mr. President, yung pong Nicaragua po, sa ICJ po dinala yun, hindi po sa GA.
Katapos po ng ICJ, sa GA po dinala.
Let me finish, Mr. President.
Just I'm correcting the fact,
Yes,
Mr.
and I'm
President.
also correcting also your facts. So, the general compulsory jurisdiction of ICJ, nag-withdraw ang US after that. And in fact, ang US, naghintay ng mas friendly na administration sa Nicaragua bago sila nagbayad. At walang nagawa ang GA to enforce, to make sure that US paid. In fact, some writers and some thinkers said, nag-weaken pa nga yung UN noon. Bakit? Kasi pag nagbotohan, so for example, we bring our resolution to the UN. The UN is strongest pag consensus. Ano po ang definition ng consensus sa UN? Ang definition po, walang nag-object ni isa. So sa UN po, pag nagbotohan at wala pong hindi po magbobotohan, sasabihin nila it is the consensus of the UN, etc. That's the most powerful sa UN. Pag may isa, magbobotohan. So, if countries close to China vote against us, they will not implement this. It will make our PCA arbitration ruling even weaker.
No, Mr.
Kasi
President.
supposedly, that's the opinion of the good senator. And again, I bring you back to the administration of Duterte and Aquino. Because we'll go back to multilateral and bilateral. No? India and Pakistan have a dispute. One of them wants bilateral, the other one wants multilateral. Senator Aquino here and his father are very frequent sa IPU. Have you ever seen an American congressman or a congresswoman or senator there? No. Why? They do not attend these multilateral legislative bodies because they do not want to be bound by them. What I'm saying, Mr. President, is that we cannot say, don't worry, nandyan ang US, they will take care of us. Our relationship
I'm not
with
saying
US,
that, Mr. President.
well, many of the colleagues and allies of Senator Tiveros in the media, whether it was the former Secretary, Justice Carpio, you have given many of your opinion during the Duterte administration. It was all leading to that, no? And even in the CA, no? Even the assurances of our ambassador to US. Ang eto point ko, the US is a good friend. They're an indispensable ally. People to people sa ating security economy, we should get closer to them. But we should not be anti-US nor anti-China. We should be pro-Philippines. Because iba ang interest ng US sa interest ng Pilipinas, sa interest ng China. Yes. Freedom of navigation, pareho tayo sa US. Pero dito sa ating territory and sovereign rights, wala po so far guarantee ang US. Hindi po sila sabi ng US, sige, go ahead. Get the minerals, get the oil. Sagot ko kayo. Wala pong ganun. Kaya nga ang suggestion ni Justice Carpio, makipag-gitgitan tayo at pagka binomba yung ating isang barko, may war na.
Pero
Kaya nga
just,
sinagot ni President Duterte, di
if
ikaw
I
ang
may,
tumayo yung
if I may
barko.
interject lang, Senator Alano, you know very much that I'm not identified with the political side of Senator Risa Ontiveros. We align together on issues.
Agree,
This is
Mr.
an issue that we align. On this
Yes.
particular case, I do not have, as a matter of fact, in my speech, I never mentioned about the United States.
Yes.
There's nothing here on my push for this resolution has nothing to do with
I'll
my
clarify that,
friendship
Mr.
with the United
President.
States.
Yeah.
I just want to put that on record. And I think the frustration that we feel is the frustration that is felt by the Filipino people. I asked the Pulse Asia for writer questions. 8 out of 10 want us to strengthen militarily against the Chinese push in on the Philippines. Almost 9 out of 10 want the Chinese out of our territory. 9 out of 10, ha? That's 90%.
Hanapin
So-
natin yung 1,
so-
dapat 10 out of 10 yun.
Hindi naman. Meron naman kasi, alam mo naman, meron naman siguro na iba yung paniwala. Ang punto ko dyan, the freedom of navigation is not for the US alone. It's for us. For example, when we try to resupply our Marines in Ayungin Shoals, my distinguished colleague, they will not allow a larger ship to pass through. Bangka lang po. Ang ibig sabihin, ang madadala lang nila ay pagkain at kung ano pa mga gamot. Yung my dear colleagues, hindi po sila nagpapadaan ng mas malaking barko because as much as we want to fortify Ayungin Shoals, which is already occupied by Philippine soldiers, just even to put a tent, they will not agree on. They're acting as if it is their territory already. As a matter of fact, that was the last skirmish we had when our supply boats were trying to send supplies to our Marines in Ayungin Shoals. And if you look at the map, Ayungin Shoals is between Pag-asa Island, which is a municipality of Palawan, and Palawan. It is closer to the Philippines. Yan ang punto ko. It's just so blatant na, alam mo, pag medyo malayo-layo pa, okay lang. It's just practice, medyo malayo din po yan. Ang aking speech kanina was just basically on Mischief Reef, Ayungin Shoal area, and Reed Bank. Before you know it, kanila na po yung El Nido. Before you know it, baka nasa San Vicente na po sila. Before you know it, nasa Aurora side na po sila, which is the Benham
Rice.
Benham Rice, because they are sending ships there now to the Benham Rice. So I think as a nation, we should. I agree with you. We should discuss this bilaterally. But if all our avenues bilaterally will fail because they refuse to listen to us, as a matter of fact, their foreign ministers, I don't think they have a Foreign Minister Wang, your friend, is no longer there.
No, he has returned.
He has
So
returned.
Wang
Did
is now the foreign
did he show up
minister.
now? He's back again?
No,
Because
no.
for a while he disappeared.
No, the one that disappeared has been replaced now.
Okay.
And the former foreign minister, state councilor, and member of the Politburo is back.
I'm
Mr.
glad to hear
President,
that. But
I'm
my-
going to yield to...
to finalize my point is, on the measure you mentioned earlier on experimental versus executive secretary, it was also held that participation of the legislative branch in the treaty-making process
Yes.
was deemed essential to provide a check on the executive in the field of foreign relations.
Yes.
And yes, the president is the chief architect, but it continues to mention that the Senate may express its opinion on foreign policy. And we've done that
Yes.
in many resolutions in the past.
Mr. President, I will yield to Senator Tolentino. And let me just say that I agree with most of what you said. Ang disagreement natin, ano yung tamang paraan, i-address yon. Nag-agree tayong lahat sa problema. Magkakasama tayo sa issue regardless of political color or administration. What I'm saying is that it's such a big step. And even if we can do it, should we do it without consulting the executive? Because it might weaken us in front of the international community. But let me yield to Senator Tolentino.
President, just
Mr.
a
President, and
mild
with the
interjection.
indulgence of the good gentleman from
Mr. President.
Cavite, if I may just say quickly to the last comment
Because
of
I
the
have
good
a
gentleman.
5:40 p.m.
Tagigan Paya.
Boarding now.
Oh,
Just a
boarding.
mild interjection.
All right, Mr. President,
I'm
in that
supportive
case.
of this resolution, but if
Where is
I
the
may
dear
be-
colleague from Cavite going to?
if I may be allowed to continue with the interpellation on Monday, Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank
of
you, Mr. President.
course. We may continue.
I had looked forward, Mr. President, to the Senate possibly adopting this resolution today, Mr. President, if possible.
Mr. President,
we
may
can take it up if,
I make a recommendation that I think...
We're a deliberative body. I said that in my speech on Monday.
Mr. President,
I think
may-
we should allow people to.
Mr. President, may I ask
participate.
that before session Monday, can we take this
Or else I
up in
will be
caucus?
called again by my minority floor leader for not following my privileged speech.
Mr. President, maybe we can take this up on caucus. Do we pass it? Do we bring it to the committee, etc.? So if you want to pass it on Monday and adopt it, then if that's what the majority
May I
wants,
suggest,
at least because Mr. President, I'll just
yes.
give you one good reason why.
Oh.
Ang pinakamasama kasi is yung mga nakikinig sa atin sa kabilang side, alam yung strategy natin. So marami
That's why I don't
akong
want to put
dapat
it on the
isasagot
committee
sa inyo.
hearing, yes.
Hindi ko masagot dito because hindi dapat sa publiko. It's not because it's confidential or it's backroom, but just because, you know, parang chess or basketball, tapos yung camera, yung coach, ganito gagawin natin, ha. So if you know, if I may appeal to our colleagues, let's have a short caucus just to discuss it. And of course, kung yun ang gusto ng majority, then we will submit. But at least mapag-usapan natin behind closed doors the implications of not being in sync with the strategy of the president. No? And in this issue, there's no majority-minority with the president. It's Philippine interest.
Although the Senate has stood ground many times by tradition,
Yes,
not always in sync with the executive.
that's true, Mr. President.
The
But
issue of the
Independent
VFA,
institution.
when the former president had canceled the VFA, we in the Senate stood.
yes, Mr.
stood
President.
pat
But that
had
did
the
not
confidence.
weaken our position. But in this case, if we are not in sync, kung sasabihin natin ganito gagawin, sasabihin ng presidente, DFA iba gagawin yung ambassador, as a former secretary of DFA, I have
I
stood
understand
there
your position as a former secretary.
So we should
for the
strengthen the
first part.
position of the country. And I disagree with the president on some issues. I might disagree with him on the China issue, how to deal with China. But I do believe he was the one elected, and we should at least hear out his people, the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea and the DFA, so that we know where we're going, di ba?
So what we can do is have an early caucus on Monday to discuss this, and we take it up on plenary, we'll adopt it or amend it. But definitely one thing is for sure. We must condemn this blatant abuse of their bullying tactics against us. We cannot just let this pass.
Mr. President,
I think we're all agreeable to that.
if the resolution
for the
simply
record,
states
Mr.
that, we
President.
can pass that right now.
President, good
So, Mr.
gentlemen.
President, may I just
And
clarify
just,
that one line lang, no?
I'm just following on the last word of the president that the very point of this resolution is to strengthen further the hand of the Philippines na lalo na ngang lumalakas sa panahon ngayon na dumadami yung mga bansa at dumadami yung mga regional formations who are supporting us in our victory at The Hague.
Mr. President, you can be sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. So what I'm saying is that if the intention is to condemn and to make a stand, unanimous tayo. Pero pag nagsabi ka na ng strategy, dalhin natin sa UN, kailangan pag-usapan yan kasi may historical background at may mga ahensya at mga in charge na nandun.
Question, my dear colleague. Question, what harm will it take?
It could
for us-
unravel all of the negotiations of a president because if the president agreed, I
But
do
the
not
president does not have to agree, Your Honor.
No,
Kasi the president will say, we will study it.
Well, then China, when we're talking, will say that the Senate wants something else. And so, meaning, Mr. President, if you're dealing with your child, and the child comes with you and sabihin, Daddy, sinabi ni Mami, okay na. And then goes to your Mami. Mami, sabi ni Daddy, okay na. So,
Mr.
of course,
President, good
appearing-
gentlemen. I'm sorry, it's
No, no.
not as simple as that.
No, no, it's
Maybe
as simple
I'm
as
already
that. You know, but Mr. President, I stood before these people, no? And
No, but I know,
and
Mr.
China,
Yes.
seeing that united ang Congress at Presidente makes a big, big difference from seeing that one part of government wants multilateral, the other one wants bilateral, one wants to go to PCA, other. They understand our democracy. But when it's the institution itself that made a stand, ibang usapan na yon.
But
Mr. President.
Your Honor, if I may just
Yes,
finish.
Mr. President.
The one thing I noticed with dealing with our friends in China is that they want to discuss it bilaterally because they want to keep it quiet. Once you take it out to the international community, ayaw po nila yan. Unfortunately, all our discussions bilaterally have not been successful.
That's not true, Mr. President.
Well, during your time, yes.
Initially,
During
there
your
were-
time,
and
yes.
I will tell you the reasons why behind closed doors. Because there are reasons for that. So my point, Mr. President, once sinabi ni President Bongbong, hindi, dalhin natin sa UN, eto tayo, multilateral, then we're free to agree or disagree and ano. Pero yung uunahan natin siya, na hindi pa niya alam, of course, that's our privilege. But sometimes you withhold your privilege because it is better for those who are negotiating. For all I know, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, because Secretary Manalo is an old hand, very much respected yan around the world, no? And he knows Minister Wang Yi. For all we know, they are renewing ties and they're bringing up certain issues. For all we know, I do not know. That's why I want to know. I want to hear the National Task Force, and I want what Senator Risa is pushing. Actually, they've been consistent. They pushed that during the Aquino administration. They pushed that during the Duterte administration. She might be right, she might be wrong. But it deserves a discussion. That's what I'm saying, Mr. President.
Yeah, I think what would be fair is that we have a caucus about this on Monday, 3 p.m.